So next up, we have Alicia Raimundo from Toronto. Yeah, give it up, give it up. I've had the pleasure of working with Alicia for the last 12 months or so on the organizing committee for the conference, and she's amazing. She's been described as a youth mental health superhero, and she's going to tell us her story and why she's known as a superhero. Thank you.
Thanks, Aiden. So, one of the things I get asked a lot is, what is a mental health superhero? And under bated breath, why do you get to be a superhero? You can't just decide to be a superhero. And so what I'm here today is to explain to you what a mental health superhero is. And like all good superheroes, you start the story from the origin story. So for me, I have always been in love with the concept of being normal. And the reason for this is because my family, my mom and my dad, had a really hard life. They both grew up in incredibly abusive homes. My father was conscripted into the Portuguese military at the age of 17, and 2 weeks after joining the military, they overthrew the government. My mom has always been a fighter. She's always been incredibly strong. She raised her 7 brothers and sisters by herself from the age of 16. Their entire life, they were told that if they try hard enough, and if they come to Canada, their kids will have no problems. They will have a wonderful, beautiful life full of happiness. And from a very young age, I felt that. I knew that, and I wanted to give them that. I wanted to be normal, beautiful, and happy. So much so that even though I thought dolls were really dumb, I would take them out of my toy chest and spread them around the ground to make it look like I had played with them, so that I would be normal. But after a while, I started to feel a little bit like Spider-Man, but not in a fun way. I started to have these feelings, these personal bad guys that were visiting me in weird times. At first, it was normal. I was anxious before a test. I was sad when something didn't go my way. But then the next thing I knew, I was anxious at birthday parties, and I was sad when everyone else was happy. I didn't know what was happening to me, but I didn't want to get ripped away from being normal. So this is why I was like Spider-Man. I was a person that people could see. I was a sister, I was a friend, I was a daughter, I was a bad student. But in nights and in times where people weren't looking, I had a mask and I had my cape, and I would fight my bad guys that I didn't have words for but now know are anxiety and depression. And one of the things that's cool about superheroes is that they have super strength to take on whatever happens to them. And since I didn't know what was happening, I felt like I had to pull from a place of super strength to figure out what was going on. And I was getting progressively and more scared, and more depressed, and more anxious. After a while, I ended up with another bad guy after me. And their name was suicidal ideation. I was so scared of myself, of closing my eyes and seeing different ways that I could hurt myself, and it was terrifying, but I couldn't speak to anyone. But after a while, you get to a point where you know it's bad enough that maybe I'll try talking to someone. At the point that I reached out for help, I had put up walls so high around me that nobody could see me. I was angry, I was sarcastic, I was definitely not the sad kid from antidepressant commercials staring at rainy windows. I wasn't fun to deal with. And so when I approached my parents, my own personal superheroes, the people who I gained all my strength from, I remember going downstairs, because I'm a daddy's girl, and asking my dad, "Dad, I have to tell you something." And my dad turned off the soccer game. He's Portuguese. This is a big deal. And he started to pull out his wallet. And I said, "Dad, I feel," and I saw a white go over his face and stop. "Go talk to your mother." My mom and my dad, my mom likes to hang out on the top floor, and my father likes to hang out in the basement. So anytime they argue with what I can do or not do, it's running up and down stairs. It's terrible. So I went upstairs and I tried to talk to my mom. And my mom, she's taken care of so many kids in her life. So when I started to tell her that I felt sad, her solution was to start spitting things at me. Things like, maybe you're not running enough, maybe you're not exercising enough, maybe you're not trying enough. What do you have to be sad about? And it was so fast. And the only thing I got from that conversation was that this, how I'm feeling, was something that they were ashamed of, was something that I wasn't allowed to talk about. And so I went back to my room that night and I firmly put that mask on harder than I've ever done before, because I felt like this wasn't a thing I could talk about. And I hoped more than anything else that she was right, that if I tried hard enough it would go away, but it didn't. It got worse and worse and worse. And eventually, I had no idea what to do. I didn't want to die, but I didn't know how to live. And so I took my last hope. My last hope was to talk to my teacher. Now, as I explained before, I was not a good student. I was not fun. But I hoped that she would be able to see through that and help me. So I wrote her a note saying that I wanted to speak with her after class. And she agreed, and I was so excited. I walked down the same hallway with the same red lockers and black and white tiles that I have done a million times before. And I got to about 4 feet behind her. And she was talking to another teacher. And I overheard her say, "I'm sorry, I have to go talk to this crazy girl now." I never went to that meeting. I turned around with every intention to never go back to that school. Because that night, I went home and I tried to kill myself. I'm so excited that I'm here and that it didn't work, but when you wake up in a hospital and realize you don't have the choice whether you live or die, it is a place of hopelessness. When you have your mask ripped away from you with no consent, and all of a sudden everything you've been running for is right in front of you, it was terrifying. But it also saved my life. And not that the doctors and people there weren't amazing, but what it was a young, older lady. She'd been staring at me the way that creepy people stare at you in subways. And I looked at her, she wouldn't look away, and I'm like, this is gonna be weird. Whatever's happening is gonna be weird. And she walked up to me when we were watching TV, grabbed my hand, put something cold and silver in it, closed it, and said, "From one crazy person to another, you're gonna need this." And then she sauntered off. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm very curious. And I plucked my hands away from my palm and I saw a necklace. And on the necklace it had the word hope. And as I was staring at this, wondering what this wonderful woman was doing in a psych ward, her daughter came up to me, and who was visiting, and said, "I'm so sorry. My mother is a manic. She's giving away her stuff. Can I have the necklace back?" It was the first time, though, that I had seen somebody else, through their sickness, through their story, be productive and help somebody else. Because in that moment, I decided if I couldn't die, I got to figure out a way to live. And I promised myself that I would stay alive to watch my sister graduate from high school. And instead of swearing at everyone trying to help me, and someone wrote a book on me being a pain in the ass, I started to listen and told people that this is what I wanted to hope for. And it sounds silly, but that hope got me back to school, got me through the hardest times of high school, helped me open up a little bit to be my friend, to be friends with people, to let people in. But still all that time I was living as Spider-Man with one face that was happy and one face that was having a hard time, but with faith that I could get through it. But it wasn't until I was 18 years old that I realized that I needed to take this off. I was sitting at a funeral. It was the 4th funeral I'd been to that year for the 4th friend of mine who'd taken their own life. And I had a moment in my mind where I said, maybe if I had said something, this wouldn't have happened. I went to more funerals that year than birthday parties, and I never want that to happen to anyone else again. This is about the same time that Iron Man came out, Iron Man 1, and anyone who's seen this movie probably knows where I'm going with this. But there's a press conference that he has. Tony Stark is the main character in this movie. And he says to himself, he's holding this press conference, he's thinking about lying about being Iron Man or not. And he considers about lying for about 1 second. And then he goes, someone asks him, "Are you Iron Man?" And he goes, "Yeah, I am. So what?" and walks off. To me, in that moment, I decided that that's who I was going to be for the rest of my life. I have depression, I have anxiety, but I'm also really freaking strong. Thank you. So I went the rest of my time seeing myself as Iron Man, which is great for your self-esteem. And I started to go, I went into university, I made a lot of friends, I lost a lot of friends, but I was a lot happier. And I was telling everybody what I was going through, I wasn't hiding, and that makes lots of interesting conversations with folks. But one of the things that I never expected to happen is actually what got me here, was I got cornered by the lady who ran my counseling services, and she said, "You're so articulate. You're gonna speak at our mental health day on October 20th. Okay, and I can't say no to authority, and public speaking is terrifying, and here I am. I was so nervous. The pictures from that event are hilarious because I have a piece of paper like so close to my face, refusing to look up. But what it was the way that I figured that I could at least see what would happen. And I did my first speech, and when I finished, it was the first time I'd ever seen my student life center quiet. Any university students can understand this. And I thought that I had really messed up. And about 3 seconds later, the whole room erupted in applause. And I had seen all of these folks come up to me and tell me they're brave and tell me their story. And I realized that speaking was my way to stand on the intersection between many people like me who were looking to talk or to hide, and encourage them that hiding wasn't the right way and talking was so great. And from then on, I have done so many speeches and been so many cool places and stages. But I think my real superpower is to make other mental health superheroes. And the secret is you're already one of them. Because you're working in this field, even though it will never get you rich, you're caring and loving, and you want to solve this problem and solve this system. And with all these superheroes that we have here, stigma doesn't stand a chance. But from one superhero to another, I will leave you with 2 pieces of advice. The first one is that we are all enough to solve the problems that we're in. We are all enough the way that we are, with our strengths and our weaknesses, to solve these tricky problems. And I truly think that's revolutionary, and it's important for you guys to remember that. But most importantly, and the thing that sits with me every day and every time I can help somebody through speaking, is always remember to be who you needed when you were younger. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.